Now we're at the stage of customizing this. I'm going to add a rail that goes from the side of the Arkitainer all the way up to the front and across all the way through this wooden canopy and down here. Just a rail to enclose everything, and it's an extra feature. We're going to use a sweep tool to do it. And the trick with this really is the fact we're going across 3 work planes, which is going to make it quite tricky to do. So we're going to have to create quite a few work planes in its construction. So the first work plane that we're going to create is actually on this side here. So we don't want it flush with the Arkitainer, we want it slightly out into this area. So what we're going to do, we're going to select the right hand work plane. I'm going to use the list up here, the features list, to select the right work plane. Once that's selected, we can then click on the plane option at the top here. It's the one that looks like a square with a small square in a corner. Hover over it and it'll tell you it's a plane. You used it before, so hopefully you remember that. We can see the arrows pointing the wrong way. I just want to drag it in the direction I want to go. And I'm going to look at it from the front so I can judge how far out that's going to be. 250-ish doesn't seem far enough. I'm going to take that to about 400. So it's much further to the left there. I'm happy with that. So I can finish it with a tick. Okay. Now the next work plane that we need to do is the one that's going to be the height of the handrail. So if we use this floor as a guide, we then select the new work plane feature at the top, and we're going to use the arrow again to drag it up. This time I know what distance I want. I want about 800 from the ground. Very typical handrail kind of height, in my opinion. You might well prove me wrong, but that's what I'm saying. And then we can finish that with a tick. And the final handrail length is coming up and across along this work plane, and we need to come back down just over this side. So it's slightly further, unfortunately, than this plane that we've already created. So what I'm going to do actually is select the side of this face, create a new work plane on here. In fact, that's the wrong work plane, sorry. I'm going to create a new work plane for it to come down. So that one is going to be lined up with the front work plane. Selecting it from my features list. And then I'm going to create the work plane so that it is bang in line with where I want to create the handrail coming down here, which is halfway really through this wooden canopy. So select the work plane. I'm going to view it from the left, and I'm going to again zoom in. In fact, I'll just put the distance in, and we'll do it a slightly different way this time. So the distance is going to, let's say it's 1000, and let's see where that disappears to. You can see now it's telling me that I've selected too many things. So let's close the 2. I just want the front plane in that options box. You see 1000 nowhere near, so I'm going to drag it across to about the centre, which looks like it's going to be about 3500. Okay. We can finish up with a green tick. So now we've got the 3 work planes that we're going to start to draw the line that we want our sweep on. So this is the line that the handrail will follow. So it's coming up from here, across with a small round on the corner. We don't want any sharp corners. All the way to this edge, round again, back through all these, round and down back into the floor. So we're going to start by drawing this section in here. So I'm going to select the work plane that we've just created, which is plane 3, use my features list. Start a sketch, looking at it from the left so it's square on, and I'm going to start by drawing in here just a rectangle roughly where I want my handrail to be. I can then curve this edge with my sketch fillet tool. The sketch fillet tool is just up by the scissors, and I'm going to make that 300mm, so you can see it's a nice round there. I'm then going to use the dimension tool to start showing exactly where I want this. So we're going to measure from this central point, the origin, to the edge there, and we're going to make that around 800 back to start with. So it's going quite a portion into the Arkitainer there. We then want to measure from this edge to the point. Don't measure off that line because we're going to get rid of that line in a moment, and we're going to make that 4250. Okay, so you can see it's not far off the centre here. We're then just going to take 300 off this to allow for the curve so it matches this, but we're not going to do it on this drawing. So what we're going to do there is take that away from here, which will leave us with 3000 950. It's important I don't just jump straight to that number, because we won't understand where we've got that from. So 4,250 minus the 300, which is quite important. I'm then going to use the scissors tool here, the trim tool. I'm going to cut away the bottom part of the rectangle and this right hand side of the rectangle. So I'm just left with this line that I'll sweep along to here. The next curve is then on a different work plane, so I'm actually going to start sketching a line now on a different work plane. So I've finished that sketch even though technically it's incomplete. You can see it's finishing there, so it's important. I'm going to try and connect to that point in a moment. So I'm actually on, and if I'm got this right and I go back into this sketch, I've actually forgotten to do the height of the line, which was a bit silly. So I need to make sure that from that point to this line, that should be 800, otherwise it won't match the work plane that we've created. So now that's 800, it matches the work plane and it'll marry up. So on this work plane, plane 4, select it in your features list if you're struggling to select it on there. We're going to create the sketch, and I'm going to look at it from the top so I can see where it is. We can see the point of the line now is here, and we're going to draw that again as a rectangle, so it makes it a little bit easier. We can then add our dimensions to it. So this line here, the distance from there to that point is going to be 300. That's the amount of curve that we're going to add in a second. And then the length of this line, we want it just poking out the side here really. So if we go to 4,100 and see where that takes us, that's coming out. I want it a little bit further, so let's go 4,200, and that will do for now. Okay, so 4,200 is good, 300's fine. We just need to add that curve and trim away like we did a moment ago. So line to line using a sketch fillet tool. That's putting my curve in nicely. Trim this big line of the rectangle, we don't want that little one there either, and that one there we can get rid of. And then if we finish that, so let's click our green tick and zoom out, you can see it now looks like a continuous line even though they're drawn on separate work planes. The final one is here. So this is the work plane that we've created. It's going to be easier to select that one from the features list. Starting a sketch, and this time I'm going to view it from the front, and we want to carry on. It's quite hard to see in there, but the line is roughly here, and we want that to come down, so you can see the lines finishing there. So it's coming all the way through, finishing here, and then we want it to curve down to the floor. We want it to touch the floor so we don't see the end of the pole. So a rectangle again. Hopefully this is going to let me select it quite nicely. If it doesn't and you're having trouble, don't worry, we can constrain it anyway. So I'm going to draw the rectangle on here, and I'm going to start to add my dimensions. So my first dimension is going to be this side here, which is 300 to allow for that curve. The next one this side is going to be 800 to get it to the correct height, and then distance from that line to here should be 0. Okay, so you can see now that should be connected up there, and we'll find out when we do the sweep if that's worked correctly, but it does look to me like that's lined up. So if we rotate that round, you can actually see where our problem's coming from. Our line does not match up with our front work plane, and that's why it wouldn't snap to it a moment ago. So we're going to have to fix that before we move forward, and we'll come back into the sketch in a moment. So let's try and figure out what's going on here. First of all, let's figure out the distance that work plane was created. So plane 5, I'm going to edit, and it's saying it's 3,500, and that's measured from the front work plane. Okay, so then if we go into the original sketch for the first line, sketch 36, and we edit, we know that this line was 3,950 from back here, but we don't know what it is from the front work plane. So we're going to measure, and we won't be able to change it straight from this, but from the front work plane, so the origin really, to this end point needs to be 3,500, but then allow for the 300 in the bend, which actually gives us 3,200. So that tells us this 3,950 is 50 millimeters out. So if I just cancel that, okay, let's delete that dimension out. Let's change this to 4,000 and then see where that takes us. And I'm hoping now that will move everything along nicely. and we should see that that is now lined up. So it's really important that we're checking our dimensions as we're moving through and checking visually that things line up. It helps you see and spot errors quite easy that you can go in and fix. So let's go back into this sketch now, looking at it from the front work plane. We're going to add that curve on and delete the two edges just like we did on the other two. So let's go to sketch fillet from the top to the right hand side. 300 is what we want. We press enter. Using the trim tool, we're cutting this side away. That's a dimension tool. It helps if I select the correct one, doesn't it? And then there we go, we can delete those few edges. Okay, for a sweep, you need two different things. You need the path that the shape is going to go along, and then you need the shape that you want to send along that path. So we're going to draw a circle on the end on this point here as the origin. So I'm going to use the sketch tool. I want the sketch to be on the floor, so I'm selecting face of extrude 15 in my example, but I've just clicked on the floor. Click the tick, and then we're going to draw our circle. You could literally play about with any shape you want here, but handrails are typically circles, and I think we're aware of that. So I'm going to go back into here. I don't know why I clicked the tick, that was silly. Circle, draw my circle, and dimension it as well. And the dimension for this is going to be 80 millimeters. I don't think that's allowed me to do that very well, so let's delete that dimension out and try again. So let's dimension. Now line there and change it to 80, press enter, and it's saying that we're locked at a tangent here. So let's delete this constraint, so left click on it and delete, and then it'll move there if yours has done the same. Okay, I'm happy with that shape now, so now I can do my green tick. That's the correct point too, not the other one, because then it's just a mistake and you'll have to open it up again. Bit silly, sorry. So now we want to sweep that shape along this handrail. So this is a good bit. We want the sweep tool. This will not work if this isn't a continuous line, okay? So it's really important we get that line right. It's so vital to make this work. Just position it in the middle so we can see it all going in one go. Faces and sketch regions to sweep. So that's the shape. That's asking you for the shape that you want to send down that path. So click on it once and then zoom in and select your shape. Next part now, you can see it's put face of sketch 29 in, 39 sorry, and it's in there as well. The path now, the sweep path, is that line that we spent so long creating. So sweep path, and I'm going to select that path there. And you can just keep clicking on these lines. Alternatively, you can select all of the sketches from here. So let's delete them edges, and I'm just going to select the 3 sketches that I want it to sweep along. And you can see now that the handrail is swept all the way through. If I finish that with a tick, you can see the handrail looking quite nice. What I'm going to do is just change the colour very slightly. So right click on part, edit the appearance. I'm just going to make it a lighter grey to look more like a silver or metal handrail, and you can see that's adding quite a nice detail to my bakery. Good luck with your sweeps.